Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
What I'm aware of is the generations, that we stand on the shoulders of those who came before, and Bob and Mindy, who've been in this community for almost 50 years, and others out there too. It's incredible, those who came before them. But there's something about the passing of generations that, we don't always relate in the same way, and that's okay. I got this from social media, but this woman said it really happened to her. She was in the room with her daughter, and she said, "Hey, hand me a phone book." And her daughter said, "Boomer," and gave her her iPhone. She said, "Well, now the spider is dead, her iPhone is busted, and my daughter is really mad at me." You get it? Okay, yeah, my timing was that's the idea, is that things change, and if we are in the flow of divine spirit, we change, but for the better. We go deeper. We become stronger. We thrive, and that's what we're really about. So this is the week 3 of the program, as Karen said, and we divided it into these three areas. Prosper, we did the last 2 weeks on prosperity. We're beginning today on thrive. We'll have 2 weeks to talk about this nature of not just surviving, but thriving in life, and the ways that we can begin to practice divine principles so that we can move into it. And then last, we'll talk about service. Because when we are here and our lives are working, we can't help but give it away. It's just the way it works. That we are designed to be connected, to be both receiving and giving of this creative energy that is God, that is moving through all of us. I've been studying the Gospel of John, and it's been really interesting. Like every time I go back to these ancient texts, it's like they're rewriting them. There's new truth in there. There are new revelations that are coming to me. And I was aware of the fact that there's these miracle stories. There are 37 of them throughout the 4 canonical Gospels. There are more than that are recorded by the early writers in the Christianity. But there's only one of them that is in all 4 of the Gospels that are included in the Christian text, in the Christian Bible. And it's the feeding of the 5,000. It's an interesting, I thought that right there sets something up. Something is interesting about this story, right? Because all 4 of those Gospels, which we know of, that are in like I said, the canonical, they're in the canon of the Christian Bible, they're all different. They were all written many years after Jesus had lived his earthly ministry, and they're all sort of aimed at a different audience. And last week I shared in the Gospel of John, what we want to be thinking, this is the mystical gospel. This is the metaphysical, that every time that Jesus said, "I," what he really means is the indwelling Christ in all of us. And if we read it in that way, it becomes so alive and powerful and empowering to our walk. And there's something in that message that still wants to include this signs and wonder story of the feeding of the 5,000. So you know the story. If you didn't grow up Christian, or if you didn't grow up in a Bible church like I did, you may not know it, but here's what happened. Jesus was teaching and performing signs and wonders throughout the Middle East in the area where he grew up, and around Jerusalem and in Galilee and Capernaum and all those great old names. And then the people began to talk about it, and they would follow him. The throngs would just follow him wherever he went. And he was leaving Jerusalem after the Passover, and they didn't make a plan, but people were just continuing to gather and follow him. Something was magnetic and happening there. And there were thousands of people, and Jesus and the disciples looked around and was like, somebody forgot to bring lunch. There are all these people here. They're going to need food. What do we do? And it's interesting. In verse 10 of chapter 6 in John, Jesus said, "Tell them all to sit down, for there was plenty of green grass there." That's an odd thing to include as a detail in this story, don't you think? Why do you think that's there? This is one of the things I think they just rewrote it recently, because it's actually in the ancient text. Do you think of any other place in the Bible where we remember hearing about the green grass? Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures." The writer of John, I believe, was connecting this story of the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000 to an earlier scripture that is about the same thing, is that we are a part of this life of God that sustains and cares for us. And how beautiful it is to just sit in the green and growing grass and be cared for and supported. And so the 5,000, and incidentally, it said there were 5,000 men, so most likely there were some women, and most likely there were some kids there too, so maybe 10,000, 12,000. But I also have to tell you, when they're talking about numbers, it's not about the literal number. What they really meant is a whole lot of people. There were a whole lot of people. They're sitting down, and Jesus said, "What do we got?" And the scripture tells us, well, there's this one kid who did think ahead, or his mom probably thought ahead, packed 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. That's not enough. We don't have enough money to go and buy food for all these people. What do we do? And Jesus said, "Bring it to me." And he blessed it and began to divide it. And something happened as the food began to be dispersed. There was more. There was more and more and more and more and more. So everyone was fed, and then Jesus ordered the disciples to go pick up the leftovers because he was frugal that way. And there were 12 baskets left over. A miracle. It's less important whether this really happened in this way or not. I've heard preachers say maybe everyone, they didn't want to share their food, so I don't have anything, but then when they saw the little boys sharing, they all began to break out their loaves and fishes. I don't know. But I know there is a deep truth for us about the nature of life, about the nature of spiritual life in particular, that is asking for our attention here. That we are sustained, cared for, and supplied by the same energy that created us. We can relax and trust God. This message comes in Jesus' teachings over and over again. He said, why worry about what you're going to wear? Why worry about what you're going to eat? God takes care of that. Remember the sparrows? Remember the lilies of the field? It's okay. You're going to get what you need. And in Matthew, where he says, seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. See, sometimes we get the idea that if I'm going to put the spiritual things first, then how am I going to pay the rent? How am I going to save for my kids' college fund? How am I going to be able to order my, Nutrisystem that's coming next week? How is that going to happen? How is it going to happen? Jesus said, don't worry. Sit down in this nice green grass and let some bread and fish come to you now. It's a beautiful teaching of supply, of prosperity, of abundance. There are a couple of verses in John chapter 6 that I also want to say. After this story, Jesus said to them, truly I say to you, it was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven, but it was my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. And they said to him, Sir, give us this bread always. Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger. Whoever believes in me shall never thirst. Now remember, when Jesus says the I, he's talking about the indwelling Christ mind that is in all of us. Not the egoic mind, not the worrying, how is it going to happen mind, but the mind that has always known its connection to source. That is our infinite supply. And when we begin to live from that place of trust and allowing and flowing, our needs are met. It sounds like magic. It sounds impractical. How many of you right now would be willing to raise your hand and say that this has been my experience, that my needs have been met when I've been living on the spiritual basis? Just look around. And many of us are new to this. We're like, those people are all lying. We're not. We have tried it. And we have had, not only have we had our needs met, we've had our socks blown off by how good life has been. We've had times that those unexpected gifts of God just show up, boom, there it is. Had no idea I was going to end up on this stage. I was minding my own business singing in a piano bar some years ago. And a gift was offered, an invitation to come sing at a New Thought church. And y'all were weird. There's nobody yelling at me and calling me sinful and talking about hell. It's like, how do you call this church? I didn't understand it. I was told I could sing anything I wanted as long as it was positive, so I sang show tunes. And it worked. They hired me. I got a gig. And that was when I began to practice these principles. Terribly, horribly bad. I practiced meditation. Oh, I was bad at it. And I hated it too, but I kept trying to do it sometimes. And then it got a little bit better. And then when I got sober, it got a lot easier. I'll say that too. But they told me to do that over there too. They said prayer and meditation. We do that. It's a way of connecting ourselves to the greater truth than our ego. But you know what the ego wants to do is have it all figured out. How many of you will know when I tell you this that it's true, that worry is the most corrosive thing to living a life in spiritual faith? I've heard people say it's like meditating on the negative. How many of us do it? Where we can see the bills that are there, we see the bank account balance, so the right thing to do is just stew on it, right? Just catastrophize about how bad it's going to be. No, that's not what happens. That's not where we want to be. Ernest Holmes and Raymond Charles Burker wrote this beautiful guide. I read from it quite a bit. It's called Richer Living. And this morning's reading, it says this: the most insidious thing which the student of truth must handle is worry. And then 4 days ago, they were in the same frame of mind, they wrote this: the assets of a spiritually minded person are the ability to remain untouched by the confusion of the world around them and to instigate a creative process which will bring order out of the chaos. God in the midst of us is instantly available as peace, order, and harmony. I think I should read that part again. God in the midst of us is instantly available as peace, order, and harmony. All that is required is to turn within and think in God's terms, God's ideas. And as we do this, the panic flees, order is born. We are already in the mind of God, which always operates in peaceful and perfect ways. We do not live at the level of condition and effect. I mean, we do. But what we're invited to do is seek first the kingdom. Live at the level of cause. And when we live at the level of first cause, which is another word for God, you know, God doesn't care what you call it. But there is a place of the original mind, the mind of God that said, let there be light, and there was light. That is where we are invited to live, in that consciousness of creativity and wholeness, of peace and order. And so the more we can bring our mind back to the mind of God within, something in us begins to shift. There's less time for worrying, at least 15 minutes less if you're meditating for 15 minutes. Well, if you meditate like I did in the beginning, maybe 2 minutes. But no, it's just the practice, right? You notice that you're worrying, so what do? Come back to the mantra. Come back to the breath. You just keep coming back. Practice is not sexy. It's not, prosperity is sexy. It's great. Come do these things and money flies in through the windows. That's great. And it actually works. Not quite in that way, but as we begin to practice these principles around our finances, it works. That's one of the reasons we teach financial good and spiritual principles around money, is because money is fluid. It can change really fast. And if we begin to live by faith there, we will begin to see it. But it works in all areas of life. When we seek first the kingdom, when we seek first the one mind, when we seek first the one life, then we begin to change. That worrying egoic mind is still there, but maybe a little less loud. And maybe it's not the first place we go. Maybe we begin to go more often to our faith, to our connection with God. And as we begin to do this, it gets better and better. I want to share with you an image from my travels this summer. I was in Ireland for 2 months, but I was for a sabbatical. But I also attended a conference, a New Thought conference in Switzerland, outside of Geneva. These are 5 women from Ukraine who are practitioners of the science of mind. In case you don't know what that is, it's sort of like our Unity prayer partners and our licensed Unity teachers combined. It's a minimum of 7-year process of study and testing. And what a practitioner does is to know the truth of God for themselves and for others. And they say they do mostly prayer work. It's really powerful. These women have all gone through that period, that process, and they were invited to come to the conference. It was very sketchy of whether or not they were going to be able to come or not, but they were able to. The money was provided. They were able to get out of the country. The one on the left, Galina, I met her when I was there in 2008. Incredible, and she was a practitioner then. She's been doing this work a long, long time. They didn't speak very much English. Galina did, but the rest didn't. And so they were using Google Translate live as things were happening, just had their microphone on and getting it in Ukraine. But then every one of the presenters got to spend an hour with them, and they asked for me to come, and they wanted to, they were just, through Galina, they were asking for my support, my help as a minister of this teaching. And their request is just one, and they asked this of all of us. How do we maintain the consciousness of peace while living in a war? How do we do that? And what I witnessed is that they are doing that. Anastasia, who's the younger woman on the left, that's her mother next to her, Natalia. And Anastasia has a 6-year-old. Their street was bombed. The house two houses over was bombed and people were killed. And she was talking about her fear for her child in this time of war and trouble. And her commitment is to know the presence of God as peace in the lives of her, in the life of her daughter, with her mother, with her community, in their country, and in this world. And what I witnessed in the commitment to spiritual truth among these women humbled and inspired me. Because sometimes it's hard for me to know that when I'm just, having a tough morning and my coffee wasn't like I like it. I can't even know the presence of God for that. And what they're going through. And knowing that the calling is upon them to know the presence and power of God as peace in their family, in their own heart and mind, in their community, and in the nation. It's transformational. The last thing I want to tell you about, last thing I want to tell you about is living a life of thriving. Thank you. You can take the picture down. It takes time. What we're really talking about is spiritual maturity. To thrive is to be spiritually and emotionally mature. And just like we were talking about the kids earlier, if you're not going to thrive in your body unless you have healthy food, healthy rest, get plenty of water. It's just the way it works. Exercise. The same is true, and it doesn't happen instantly. I used to think, if I could do like one sit-up, could I just be done? Whew, that's done. 6-pack, there it is. No. That doesn't work that way. Why, David? In this incarnate reality, I don't have the answer. Maybe there are dimensions we go to where that is the reality. But actually, I do know why. Amy Grant has the answer for us, David. There's a song she recorded a few years ago. It's called Overnight. She said, if it all just happened overnight, we'd never know what it means. If it all just happened overnight, we would never learn to believe in that which we cannot see. And that requires time. Time plus commitment plus practice equals maturity in faith. And that is how we get to the level of thriving in our lives. But I want you to know that doesn't mean surprises don't still happen. Now, hopefully most of us will not have to go through what those beautiful women are going through right now in Ukraine, dealing with that level of upset and turmoil. But we'll go through stuff. We will. And when we have done the work of spiritual practice, when we have become mature in our faith and we are resilient, we go through it. And I'm looking at Terry, I'm looking at Marilyn, people have had major health stuff happen in the last few years. And I'm just looking at you too because you're right here. I could look all around the sanctuary and see that. But I've seen the way these two friends of mine, long-term members of this community, of how they've moved through that with faith and thriving through all of it. Marilyn's here at church today. Just had knee surgery. I'm so grateful to see you here. And sometimes the surprises are good ones. I love this from Twitter. When my son was 3, he had a guinea pig named Rufus. One day he left the cage open and Rufus disappeared. I bought a replacement Rufus. Never told my son, and things were going fine until the original Rufus showed up. And I had to pretend that he was Rufus's cousin Roger from Philly. Wonderful surprises come into our life, like a Rufus the guinea pig or his cousin Roger from Philly. Or sometimes we grow to a point in our lives when we have to leave the nest. I hate this part, and yet I love it because I did it. We have people like Bob Wolfram and Mindy Lawrence Curtis who have planted here and flourished and thrived and given for almost half a century. Incredible. Jen Dickey, would you join me on this stage? About 8 years ago, we think, Jen Dickey arrived here ready to grow, ready to change and become more of who you were created to be. I have watched and witnessed and mentored her, and we had a lot of lunches and conversations, and continuing to stay committed to the truth of your spiritual being. And I've seen you receive that support over and over again. So many of you know that we celebrated her ordination as a Unity minister in June, and we had a wonderful celebration of you here. And I had a feeling that that calling and that ordination would take you away from us at some point. And I'm sorry to say and happy to say this is Jen's last Sunday with us here at Unity of Houston. She has taken a position with Unity Worldwide Ministries and is in the process of moving her life up there. So she gets to serve not just our Unity community, but all of Unity worldwide. So let's give her some love. So we are so happy to have you here. Go ahead and anything you want to say.
I was told I can't give a sermon today, never give a minister a microphone because she's got something to say.
It's a risk we take. Yeah.
But, oh my gosh, what an honor. What a joy to be a part of this community, coming in at a time in my life where I was very broken, and just like Michael talked before about practice, it wasn't sexy. Growing and being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to be authentic, to be willing to allow myself to be loved and loved fiercely. That's something that took time, that took growth. And really, when I look at this prosper, thrive, and serve, it ended up kind of happening in the reverse order for me, where the first thing I did was I stepped into service, and I really kind of threw myself headlong and was in just about everything. I don't know if I was channeling Bob early on or what was going on, but just really jumped into this ministry and these teachings, and then to see myself thriving in the prosperity that has come. I am just deeply, richly blessed for this amazing, amazing man who has been paramount in my life.
Thank you.
For these amazing ministers, mentors, friends, for this entire community that has loved me through. I was thinking, what else do I want to say? Just so much. It's really a gift. And then to be able to take the gifts and the talents that I have. That was the other thing I wanted to say, was just Reverend Michael's willingness to say, come play in this job. Bring your humor, bring your fun, bring your creativity.
Bring your minions.
Bring my minions, all one of them. And bring that. And there's such a passion that has happened, and really it just kind of launched into my call to ministry. So in the digital age that we're in now, I will not be going far. In fact, I already just found out this morning I'm coming back before the end of the year, so I'll definitely be back to visit. But what an honor to get to then move into this next step of going to Unity Village and serving in that capacity in their virtual experiences departments. So I intend to do y'all proud, and again, just thank you so much for the love and support and lovingly releasing me. Absolutely. I know
we're tithing her to the universe. We expect tenfold coming back, so that's what we know to do. Yeah. I'm going to ask the ministers to come join me on stage. So how about you stand here, Jen, and we're just going to make a circle behind you because we want you to know we have your back. We have a gift for you. This is from the ministry. But I'll let you go ahead and pull that out just so you can see what this is.
It's not bread, is it?
It's not bread. I'll bring you bread.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Is it tacos?
I know, right?
You could put tacos in it, but that's really not what's intended. Give that a ring. Just bang it. Yeah. There you go. She is a drummer. Oh, I don't know if you can hear it, but it's got a really deep, low tone. Beautiful. You hear that? Every time you ring it, that's what our loves. I would like you all to extend your hands toward Jen right now as we bless her. Reverend Jen Dickey, we see you. We love you. We are going with you in this journey. We recognize that the life of God is flowing in, through, and as you, and we bless not only you and your life, your prospering, thriving, and serving, but also those whom you will serve, that through your life, through your work, through your service, they prosper and thrive. With every time you ring the bell, with every prayer you pray, with every song you sing, feel our love, feel our support. We go with you, and so it is. Amen.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.